Good morning. So today is going to be a different format of a video just because I thought let's mix things up a little bit. I actually just came back from a drop-in that was a client's house just now, and it is President's Day weekend. I have the day off. Addison does not have the day off, so I'm going to just be utilizing this time to just do whatever I want to do in the city. So I'm actually going to be walking to the subway now to go for lunch. This particular video is going to be focused on what exactly do I do. Hopefully the wind is actually not too bad. I think there's wind right now. Most times, if you haven't watched my video over here, I actually said I don't really do vlogs anymore just because it's gotten very tricky with showing me what I'm actually doing. So I thought I'm going to just make this video in general. So a little bit of what I do is I particularly, and I'm going to be saying it as if I'm actually doing a phone call or a coffee chat with someone asking about what I specifically do. So please don't think that that's actually what all of them do. I just want to give you mine so that way I can get all these questions out of the way. So for me particularly, I work with, I think ever since I spoke about this, my role has actually changed. I've done Google Shopping, ads, and now, as of August of last year, hotel ads. If you've noticed on my LinkedIn, it even shows that a little bit too. So what that means is that I actually work with two product areas and two groups of clients. In the past, I've worked with just one group of client, which is just all retail clients. This is a little bit different than other people already on my team because other people, they just straddle one product area. The reason why they specifically gave me hotel ads is because I said I wanted some challenge, and right now with my current client set, I just could not. I just didn't get that much of a challenge, or I wasn't that stimulated. Straddling two product areas will definitely get you there because you're learning a whole different product area and you're working with a whole different dynamic of clients. Oh my god, all these freaking cars. Hopefully, well, Manhattan's not going to be better, but hopefully there won't be that much sounds later on. So I want to talk about shopping advertising solutions architect, and I want to talk about hotel ad solutions architect separately. With shopping, I specifically work with retail clients. They all roll up under retail. There's other areas, for example, video, where they would have multiple industries. But for me particularly, because the only people that would be really selling are actually retail. So I work with those clients, and specifically I have a book of business. It's about 10 to 15 clients. Some of them some of them are small in size, and some of them are really big in size, and they are generally kind of sized up based off of revenue or growth opportunities or how strategic this client is by a separate area within our company that determines the named account list. And then for me specifically, that's where I go in and work with them on the implementation side. There's the reactive and there's the proactive side. In the city now. Alright, I am now in the city. But there is reactive work and proactive work. And with the reactive work, it's usually more of, hey, we've noticed that something went wrong or an issue happened, so we try to fix it. Proactive work is more of, okay, we've noticed that in the past we've noticed more trends with shipping have had issues, so we're gonna fix shipping. Here's some optimizations. Or every year or even twice a year at one point, we have account planning around January time. This is around the time that we started to do account planning or to implement the account planning. This is where we're thinking about what are the year's focuses, what are the year's projects we want to do, and from there we actually work with them and try to pitch it and then actually do the work. So there's also the other way around, where for retail specifically, Cyber 5, which is basically Thanksgiving through Cyber Monday, are our most key times of the year because that's where a lot of people end up investing their ad revenue to make sure people actually go and purchase something in the biggest shopping season usually of the year. And from there, we also try to do some account planning, or not account planning, but optimizations last minute around July or August. So that way it's well in advance before we actually do it. So there's some that's more proactive, generally earlier in the year because they could take longer time, and some that are more quick fixes or even reactive at a certain point. So because of that, there's actually like a lot of differences with the cycle of a project, because for me specifically with shopping, it's cyclical. With it being cyclical, there's a lot more work, I would say, towards like the summer, early fall, and then it gets quiet because there's something called code freeze, which is where the actual merchant themselves, they are just not going to implement anything because they want to be more stable and they want to make sure that nothing breaks down essentially when they try to do something. And for me specifically, I actually work with account teams, so account executives, account managers. Sometimes there's like a head of industry involved, which is essentially like their head. I also work with like the product sales specialist, so in this case it is shopping sales specialist, and we all work together to try to pitch to a client. We all work with the same clients, so in this case the account teams, usually they're put in pods, and these pods, they're allocated to particular areas of business. So for example, maybe they are all fashion, maybe they're all tech, maybe they're all telecommunications, all that kind of stuff, and then they're usually allocated to a book of business that that particular pod has. And so for me particularly, I don't actually work with a particular pod. I work with multiple pods. They try to put me to work with the same people most of the times, because then you get to avoid a lot of those issues. But in general, I've worked with like many different pods, many different shopping sales specialists. Even the shopping sales specialists themselves are not like specific to a pod. They actually work with many different pods as well. Ooh, going for lunches here. Looks like there might be a line, but maybe with just one person I'll be fine. Thank you. Oh, that hits the spot. I always love hand rolls because the texture of the seaweed is so nice with it. So now I'm actually going to be heading out to this place called Fashionphile. I've never actually been there in person before, so that's why I'm going out today. Now, like, what exactly do I do? There's like a series of calls. Honestly, I have not been on site at all. A lot of it is just like they either come to our office or that they are on calls with us. And even so, like whenever I talk to my clients, they seem to be also working from home sometimes, or that they're in the office for themselves. So it's like a little bit of a mix. I think like with the pandemic, from what I heard, people did go on site a lot more. There are still people on my team that do actually go on site though. It like also depends on your clients. Like I would say a lot of the work that I do is very individualized. Like it's not like you have a manager or project manager or lead telling you what to do. At the end of the day, you're actually going to be doing it yourself. You have to do the account planning. You have to be the one that's planning everything, implementing it. You work with the account team, but they're really more of like your team. They're not telling you what to do. What they will ask you instead though is that they're going to ask you, hey Christine, can you look into see if this actually would work for them, if they're a good candidate, what are the things that they can optimize in. So they partner up with you, but ultimately it's like a very, very kind of like you're your own boss there, because everything is self-driven. You're suggesting, you're recommending, you're pitching. You may work with the pod to pitch. Like the other day I actually pitched product details and highlights to one of my clients with my engagement manager and account executive to the client, and so it sounded like they were interested, and now we're just really there to see it through. So that was more like the proactive side. They were asking us like, hey, we would love to learn more about how we can optimize our feed or do more than what we're already doing. What would you suggest? So I did some work, figured it out, found some ideas, tried to tell them what is their lowest hanging fruit, and that's what we ended up pitching. Because when you pitch the lowest hanging fruit and you suggest to them what would actually help with them and why would it help with them. So in our call, I actually had this deck that I worked with our account team and engagement manager with. So we're partnering up with them to do this, but sometimes I may actually be expected to do it by myself. But it really, really helps to have your account team and your engagement manager on the same page as you, because ultimately you guys are going to be working together. The whole point of it, honestly, is that like we don't work with the account team on a reporting way. We work them mostly for like the client specific area. So, oh my god. This is why this video is gonna be so hard to do. But yeah, we essentially, it's very similar to consulting, where you work under people that are all doing the same thing as you, but you're not exactly working with them. So like in consulting, you can all be doing, I don't know, like Workday financials, software implementations, but you may not be on the same project team. In this case, your project team makes up an account manager, account executive, sometimes an engagement manager, and then other people on the team as well. But you specifically, or at least I specifically, am the only one that's actually on the shopping feed specialist side. So when it comes to shopping sales specialist, that particular role is actually more on the sales side. So when we say shopping ads, they're working on the ad side. I'm working on the feed that powers the ads. So it's still like a technical role. A lot of people feel that the work that I do is it's like actually pretty similar to them, but they work on like Google ads, and they work on the shopping areas of like TROAS or conversion or impressions. I work more on like the tech behind it in some ways. So for example, the inventory feed, the feed rules, the custom labels, the merchant promotions, like literally the back end that powers the ads. Because at the end of the day, the ads is like the UI, and then of like the external facing side of things, they might have people go like, hey Christine, I'm noticing this is like a little bit odd, or that like, hey, we want to have this kind of sales annotations on the actual ad, what can we do? And then I have to tell them what they can do on the back end to actually enable it, or to make sure that it shows up. So in some ways, I'm like the shepherd between Google and their tech / feed partner / tech team / marketing teams, or even like agency. And we work with them to make sure that we can make that happen. So there's like also some cool stuff that we do on the side. Like for example, if our client is like on the lead list for a particular pilot or beta, then I work with them as well to also implement the beta, or even try to get them on a beta. We also get a lot of emails internally as to like all these cool features that are coming out, and we also have to help them as well with onboarding or learning about the feature. So there's a lot of cool things that happen. A lot of these things don't really go on my schedule until I get notified. But I will say that the typical times that we tend to be more involved in are usually like the proactive longer term projects that are in the beginning of the year, or starting in the beginning of the year at least. And then you also have and when I say like beginning of the year, I mean like it could be content API, like setting up an API to submit your feed data, or maybe onboarding onto like local inventory ads. For some, it could be really easy lift, like 1 week. For some, it could take months or even years in some ways. So usually I would say bigger the client, the bigger the lift, because they have a lot more data, a lot more to work with, maybe even a lot more systems. There is a particular thing I'm trying to onboard my client on, and they have like many different banners. So for them, it's like many different systems. So it's a lot more complicated. I have to also be the one that when I try to pitch these, or I try to learn more about their systems, because I know their systems, I know what we can do, or like the workarounds, or the problem solving we can do. But I will say specifically for shopping, it's like everyone's experience can be very different. Like for example, marketplace. There's someone that could be doing like, I don't know, DoorDash, Uber, Poshmark, like those marketplaces. That could be like someone's specialty. The other one could be like maybe someone has a giant like Amazon, or a giant like Target. Like those are all things that people specialize in. I don't really have a specialty, but again, I do have hotels, so I am specializing in hotels though. So that's a little bit different compared to everyone. I think like everyone on our team has like some kind of specialty, or that they are an SME on something, subject matter expert. So they are the go-to for if we have like regional availability and pricing, or they are the go-to for local inventory ads, or for content API, so on and so forth. So for me, honestly, when it comes to shopping, that's all it really is. Like you handle your own book of business, you work with your own account teams, you're going to be the one that has to set up your own report. If they don't really work with you, they won't work with you. So you have to really try to make an effort. For me, I have to do a lot of prioritization because I have two books of business, one for shopping and one for hotels. For us, the priority is actually on shopping, mostly because our team is mostly shopping or retail focused. But I will say, when it comes to my clients, I tend to prioritize based off of the revenue they bring in, the potential, and also in general, like the size of the client, because usually size of the client or revenue potential or revenue generated in general can mean that it's a huge change if we do one little thing versus a client that, oh, we just want to see what we can do if we make one tiny little tweak, but we don't know how much it's actually going to lift because we don't know. So sometimes it's like, how much juice is worth the squeeze? So we have to size up the opportunity. That's generally what we have to do when it comes to coming up with new opportunities, implementing it. Otherwise, we're going to burn ourselves out because it's not that common to have implementations for every single one of your clients. It's only really common if it's like your key clients or your key players, or at least Google's key players. So for me, I have like about 3 to 4 that are key players or the ones that I've been most involved in, or at least some that are really good and some that are just very demanding. So I work with them in general to try to help them with that. The other thing is that that's just like the client side of the work. We work with, like, we're very individualized. We have our own clients. We try to pitch them. We are like the sole consultant when it comes to this area. We either do proactive or reactive recommendations. We help them implement. And sometimes we work with, like, I'm going to just talk about the technical part now about what we exactly do. For shopping feeds, we look at their merchant center, their Google merchant center. We look at their feed. We look at what we can optimize and what is incorrect, maybe even sometimes, because there's a whole area where there's diagnostics even, where we can say like, hey, we noticed that like 50% of these items have this issue. Here's what we can fix. That's like the more reactive way. There's also the more account level related ways. So merchant promotions, shipping settings, taxes, all that. In general, it's hard to kind of learn on the spot, but it's more of something that you kind of learn when the client has an issue or the client has a question on something, and then now you have like some context to put it on, because we all know how retail kind of works because we shop, right? But from the retailer side, to really understand the client but then also implement that and help them translate what they're trying to do into merchant center is the hard part. And a lot of times you don't know every single scenario because every retail is going to be slightly different. Like, who knows how many people can do same day delivery? How many people don't do taxes? How many people accrue their own taxes? Like, there's a lot of random things that will pop up, but Google is meant for everyone. So we can't really cater to everyone, but at the same time we can make workarounds for everyone. So that's just the merchant center part of it. And now we have the feed part, which is actually the part where they upload the feed into merchant center. There's many different ways that you can actually upload a feed. You could do it through SFTP upload. You put in a file path, password, all that kind of stuff. You can do it Google Sheets. You can do it through a file upload, which is more manual because you're literally uploading a file. You could do Content API. There's many different ways. But even with each of them, they all have their own considerations of limitations. So you have to kind of figure out what is the best for that particular business model. For example, if you have a lot of data, one single file is probably not enough. But if you have, like, I don't know, eBay, where prices on marketplaces and items are constantly uploaded, you might want to do like an API kind of way, right? Or something that changes the prices a lot because of bidding, then you might want to do that as well. So there's a lot of different things that we have to consider that's not even just on merchant center. Then there's also on the actual, like, not even beyond that, from the feed side, it could be what's on the feed. For example, how do we enable sales annotations? It could be something about how the prices have been given to us. This could also mean a lot of different things. So for example, this could mean a lot of different things in my opinion. There's like so many things that can go wrong with annotations, merchant promotions, and then with the feed there's like custom labels or how the prices are done, how often the prices are uploaded, how frequently do they change, how often do they actually change, because There's even sometimes where there's stale data. They change it frequently, but it's not actually updated. So there's a lot of different ways. You kind of have to understand the data pipeline to understand it. And the only way to do that is if you know your client, because not all clients are the same. Because some clients do work with like feed partners that actually transform the feed itself before it gets into us. So we have to kind of figure out along the way, where could that issue be? So honestly, there's like a lot of different things, a lot of facets of shopping that is very difficult in the feed side of things, which is why our team is so big. So that is what I do. It is very similar to what I do at Accenture, but the main focus is actually more on, I represent Google, I don't represent Accenture. So before I was like, I represent Accenture implementing Workday, but I do have the capability to be like, hey, do you want to try this new beta out? Or like, here, I'll get you more information about what this pilot means, or what this new feature is, what this means for you. We can also report bugs too, compared to before, where you'd have to report it through something else, and then hopefully it gets addressed. But thankfully, we don't really have that many issues for that. There's also a lot of like things in between, like for example, documentation, creating cases, working with support, all that kind of stuff for the intermediaries in the meantime. Typically, I get what I want from out of it because I get the technical part, I get the business ownership, I get the implementation, the consulting, all that stuff. I get my own time to schedule my own individual schedule. It's like all across the board though, because depending on your client, they could be different they could be different time zones, they could be very demanding, they could be not as demanding, they might not have any appetite. The actual dynamic is also very interesting too, because the dynamic is in a consulting firm, you get an SOW and a contract. The client pays the contract, either like on payment or whatever. And oh my God, this usually means that they're paying for your services. This is probably the biggest difference for my particular job. And I can't tell if this is what other solutions architects or solutions consultants do. I'm pretty sure it's a little bit different. We don't get paid. This is more like we're doing pro bono work, but because we're working, our named account lists are now is basically like our top accounts. It's in our best interest that they do well, essentially. So you're like number one, protecting revenue so that anything happens, they won't go down because they are, you know, like our top customers. We want them to keep spending money on us at least. Number two, we also want to make sure that we grow the revenue potential. So maybe there's ways that they're not optimizing. So we're just making sure that they do optimize, or that there's like cool pilots and programs that we have out there that they do take advantage of. So naturally, you're like, how do I know how important this client is? But like I said before, it's about the revenue potential or how much revenue they bring in. So when I have like 15 clients, I go focus on my biggest clients, which tend to be the ones that bring in the most revenue. So for me, I actually have to kind of figure out, okay, how much does this actually do? Does this project, like let's say, increase click-through rate? Does it increase impression? Doesn't it improve does it reduce costs or reduce the time or improve the time saved on a particular activity by doing something like that? So there's a lot of different things that when we pitch, there's like a completely different dynamic because you don't already have buy-in from the pre-sales team that the team has been able to buy in and get in a contract. Here, you are the pre-sales, the sales, and the after sales because you're constantly working on the account. It's not like you're on a project. You are working on multiple projects within the same account, but this account is your account until they roll off of if they ever become like off of the named accounts list. So it's your best interest to set up a good relationship with the client. The client also always changes priorities too. They might change their agency, they might hire, they might lay off, they might fire, all that kind of stuff. So they're constantly like a changing kind of business that you have to work with. It's very difficult, honestly. But I will say, we're almost up at Fashionphile. Very interested to see how they're like because every time I try to go, they're closed. So for now, I'm gonna close this off. Hopefully this helps. Honestly, this may not have worked. I might actually have to refilm the whole thing because of this freaking wind and all the sound and make it more structured. But I try to make it in a way where it's a little bit more interesting because it's a change of scenery, but at the same time, talk to you as if I'm doing a coffee chat. Alright, so I just checked out Fashionphile. I wasn't gonna buy anything, it's just mostly I just wanted to see it because it looks really pretty and it's got some rare bags in there. But what I will say is, like, to end this video, my favorite things I like about my role is that I get to essentially make my own schedule. When I say that, I meant like day to day, week to week, month to month, maybe not like year to year. There are some projects that will demand more work and time, but it's not like I can't say like, oh, I can't work this hour. I can always move that hour to do that work elsewhere or other times. And I like that because I get to go to the office, work my schedule, do my cat sitting. I know some people that have to go pick up their kids or go do a workout class or walk their dog kind of thing. There's like many things you can do. It's a little bit different than like traditional consulting where you're traveling on site and you're kind of like working with a team. Because you're by yourself, you're essentially working with yourself and also the people that you partner with. But even so, you have like way smaller people that and when I say that, I mean like either the client or the actual pod or other people that you work with. You just work with their individual schedules. It's not like you're on site. I really like it because I get to, it's like self-paced, it's like different. Even if like one client is boring, you get another client that's got some stuff happening. So many different things you could do. So now I'm gonna be walking along the Hudson River area. Well, the light just turned, but that's what I do. So yeah, if you have any questions about my role, what I do, let me know in the comments down below. Hopefully this gives you a lot more specific information that is not generalized, because in general I want to be able to provide general information so you have a general idea of how it's like. But I'm going to tell that this is essentially what my role is in case you're interested in how it actually looks like. I just can't show the day-to-day, but I can tell you what the day-to-day is. All right.